نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد يروي رضي الله عنه قال the hadith tonight collection Imam Bukhari narrated to us by Anas, and this theme that I'm going to cover over the next few weeks until we enter the pre-Hajj season, where we'll talk about Hajj. Obviously every year we make sure we cover a number of hadith about Hajj and share it with everyone here. I'm going to talk about youth. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, who was a young boy when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, around 10 years old. He was granted the honor of being the Prophet ﷺ's personal servant in his home for 10 years. He spent 10 years of his life, all of his teen years, anhu, in the house of the Prophet ﷺ, just hanging out with him all day. Whatever he wanted, he would get. He needed water for wudu. He needed help with chores around the house, errands, whatever. And Anas, he talks about himself, actually putting together all what he said is a fun thing. One of my friends did it when we were in university. He wrote like a nice piece where he gathered everything Anas said about his experience with the Prophet ﷺ and put it in one place. An amazing column that he wrote, honestly. I wish I had it. Because he talked about himself, he wasn't a very good servant. He was saying, I wasn't that great. The Prophet ﷺ would send me places, I would forget where I was going and go play for an hour, and then he would come and find me and I didn't do what I was supposed to do. He never yelled at him, ﷺ. But this is what he said in observation of the Prophet ﷺ's entrance to Medina. This is just one sentence. قال لما قدم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المدينة لم يكن في أصحابه أشمط غير أبي بكر. That when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, there was none of his companions with him who was ashmat. Ashmat ay man shaba sha'ruh, meaning who had gray in his hair, except Abu Bakr. The only person who had some gray in his hair, who was similar to him in his age, was Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. He was close to the age of the Prophet ﷺ, a year younger, or 2 years younger. What was he saying? That as this young boy's observation was that when the Prophet ﷺ came from Mecca, that everyone, all of his ashab were young people. None of them were ashmat. None of them were grey, except Abu Bakr, who was with him. He was the only grey guy. He was the only older ammu. The rest of them were all like him, which is why he became who he became. Which is why Anas became Anas. Is because he looked, and when he saw the Prophet ﷺ come to Medina, he didn't see a bunch of old guys come with him. He saw shabab with him. The only old person he was able to observe was just one, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. And interestingly enough, Anas would later on grow up to love him. يقول ما أحببت أحدا بعد رسول الله كحبي أبا بكر. I never loved anyone after the Prophet ﷺ as much as I loved Abu Bakr. فكنت أقول أرى جاء أبو بكر وعمر وذهب أبو بكر وعمر. When the Prophet ﷺ came, it was Abu Bakr and Umar. He left, it was Abu Bakr and Umar. فإني والله لم أصنع صنيعهما. And indeed, I did not do the deeds of Abu Bakr and Umar. ولكني بحبهما أرجو أن أحشر معهما. But I love them and I hope I find myself with them يوم القيامة. But this is what Sayyidina Anas observed. If you want, you're getting like a testimony from outside of the Prophet ﷺ's words and his if you understand what I mean. Like instead of hearing it from him ﷺ saying shabab, shabab, no, forget about that. Let's pick a person, a random kid who lived in Medina, who standing on a little hill, watching the Prophet ﷺ come into Medina with his ashab. This is what he observed. There's not one of them that's ashmat. None of them are grey, except the guy who's on the horse beside him, Abu Bakr. The rest of them they're not grey. They're all like me. They're all young like me. And because he saw that, radiallahu anhu, he later on he carried it, and that's what this was built on. Whether this is the reality of the matter. This is how Islam came about. Came about through the willpower, the passion of young people. And the Prophet ﷺ invested in them and spoke to them and brought them on board, and it's because of that Islam went far. And it won't go far until we do that again. And we end up with the same observation that Anas had. It's when someone like Anas observes that the Shaykh is surrounded, or the Shaykh something like the Prophet ﷺ had. ما فيهم أشمط. There's no old person amongst them. They're all younger people, because youth will attract youth, and youth will bring in youth, and young people will bring in more young people, and that's how you build. That's how you build a community for the future. That's how you change the reality of today. Then you have he had older people with him, alayhi salatu wasalam. Obviously he did, but they were in the background keeping the peace. They were using the skills that they had, the networking, the wealth, their diplomacy, allowing the shabab to actually carry and do the work and take the initiative and make the mistakes and go forward. It's because of this balance, because of this equation that worked, things actually functioned. Today we don't have that. That's not the case. In our Muslim ummah, it's not the case anymore. We went back to how the rest of the world treated their demographics, the epic struggle between the old and the young, where the young are trying to push the old out and the old are trying to repress the young because they have the money. That's not how Islam was built. Honestly, that's not how it was built. This struggle never existed. They brought them in. They gave them they worked in the background, so that a kid like Anas could look, and he would see, oh, they're all like me. There's only one old guy. The rest of them are all young, motivating him to later on become the great scholar. Imagine if Anas didn't. Do you understand how much knowledge would have been lost if Sayyidina Anas al-Malik did not continue down that path? If he didn't feel motivated to go serve and live with the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام and learn from him, how much would have been lost? يروي الإمام البخاري في صحيحه عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال: لما قدم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم المدينة لم يكن في أصحابه أشمط أي من شاب شعره غير أبي بكر. صدق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. سبحانك وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت استغفرك وأتوب إليك. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا